everybody. So here's something that a lot of people talk about, a quick change rear end. In this case it's a 10-inch rear end, and a 10-inch refers to the size of the crown wheel inside. This is what's actually been referred to as the quick change part. These sprockets over here, you can take those out and change them out, obviously. This is a couple of the spare gears that go in there, and as you can see over here, there's a whole lot of different ratios available. This is the column that you need to check for this particular quick change. And as you can see, you can flip them around. So a 397, if you flip that around, so you put the big one on the other side, then it turns into a 427, and that goes all the way until like a 219 or a 776, which is of course something that you're not going to use with normal wheels or tires. It's only used for drag racing or off-road or some kind of weird application. So that's the unit. There's a lot of misunderstandings about them. One of them is the weight. Before we got our first unit, people said like, oh, they're like 70 kilos or whatever. Well, they're not, and we're going to find out in a little bit why. And another thing is that a lot of people say they rob 100 horsepower because they have extra gears, so you're going to lose so much more power in the drivetrain, and I'll do some explanation about that too. So one of the things I want to talk about is the size of this crown gear, which is the big gear that sits inside the differential over here, which is 210 millimeter, hence the name 210 diff. And let's say, for instance, that this is our crown gear, and this is 210 millimeters. Obviously, if you have a 2.56 differential, that's a very low ratio. You're going to have the same size, so it's also going to be a 210, which means that it has less teeth, which means that the teeth on a 210 differential with a 256 ratio are going to be considerably bigger than a 210 differential with a 391 ratio. So that means that if you want a high ratio, which works in drifting like a 391 or a 410 or a 427, in the 210 application, the teeth are going to become smaller, which means that you'll break them sooner. So the difference on the quick change is that this crown wheel actually is a 254 millimeter, so a 10-inch. So that means that you can run a higher ratio. So these are 412 to start with, and still have pretty beefy teeth in them. So that's also the reason why they are a little bit bigger, of course, and that's just to accommodate the bigger crown wheel. So another thing to consider, obviously, is the gear drive in the back, which a lot of people say like, hey, you're going to lose so much power with that, without even having seen a differential in real life or tried it. I can tell you one thing, that we had a car with a Nissan differential on the dyno, which made 15 crank horsepower more after we installed a quick change, so it's certainly not losing any power. So you may ask yourself, like, so how is it possible that this is not losing more power when you have extra gears in it? Well, there's two reasons for that. Number one is that this is straight cut gears, which obviously is a very direct drive, so you're not losing much power over there. And there's a second reason for that, which I'm going to explain to you right now. If you take a look at this differential, you can see that the axle, the incoming axle goes underneath. The differential enters over here, and then it goes back, and this actually drives the crown wheel. So if you would take a ruler, which we have over here, and you would check, then you would see that this is actually on a 3 o'clock angle. So this shaft is gonna hit the crown wheel exactly at 3 o'clock. And this type of sprocket drive is called a spiral bevel. However, on this 210 differential, it's a little bit different. If you take a look over here, you can see that the angle of the pinion and the ingoing shaft in the differential is a little bit lower than the center line of the differential. So if you would take this ruler and make it go through the middle, you can see that it's not meeting the crown wheel exactly at 3 o'clock, so it's meeting it a little bit lower. So let's say that it meets the crown wheel around over here, and that's actually a different type of gear drive, and that's called hypoid. High point drive is used in almost all cars used for the road, and the reason why this is done is actually a few. The first is obviously that you don't want to have the drive shaft going through the interior on a way too high level. So if you would be having a normal differential and you want to have the input of the differential coming in here, it will mean that your drive shaft is going to be a lot higher in the car, which is obviously what car designers don't want because it costs you space. And the second thing is that the high point runs a lot more quiet. So a high point gear drive is going to be more quiet than a spiral bevel gear drive, but it's also going to lose a little bit more power. So actually the standard type of differentials that are used in cars will be consuming a little bit more power in the sprocket drive than the quick change would from this drive going to the crown wheel. So if we simplify that a little bit, you can see over here, if this is our crown wheel, on the quick change you can see that the pinion would touch it over here. Like I said, the spiral bevel, and as I said, that's the most direct drive that you can get, which is going to lose the least power. And on the road car diff, the pinion wheel is going to sit over there on the crown wheel, which is called high point. And as I said, the high point is going to run a little bit more quiet, but it's also going to rob a little bit more power. So that could be an explanation why we ran both these differentials in a Nissan S13, and with the quick change it actually made more power to the wheels. So the quick change that we offer has a couple upgrades, and there's actually a whole lot different variations in quick changes, and we get them with all the upgrades that we think are important for drifting. There's in total more than 20 upgrades in the differentials that we sell compared to a standard Winters differential, so that way you ensure that you invest in the correct thing. So what we'll be doing right now is weighing the quick change and the 210 diff. This quick change doesn't have any fluid in it, but the 210 diff also doesn't have any fluid in it, so that's going to be a good comparison. So the quick change, the 10-inch quick change, the way we sell them is 43.85 kilos. That's including the rear gear set, of course, but it does not include the fluid that goes in it. So with the fluid and everything inside, it would be a little bit over 45 kilos. And this is the 210 diff on the scales. As said, it does not contain any fluids, and that's 44.50 kilos. So as you can see, it's not touching anything, so that's just the weight of the thing. It's just a little bit dirty, so that's why I put the plastic underneath it. So that's actually the quick change is lighter in this case. So that's a few words on the quick change 10-inch differential specifically for drifting. As you can see, a few myths have been busted, like the weight. So they're not 80 kilos, they're actually the same weight as a BMW 210 differential. And if you take in account the extra gear drive, you should also consider that this is a spiral bevel drive compared to a high point drive over here, which means that you don't lose extra power running the quick change. And in our experience, a few times we actually had cars that made a little bit more. You should also understand that this is obviously an old diff, diff from 2001, so that's 19 years old, and it's obviously not driven by Miss Daisy. And this is a brand new American produced 2021 product. So that means that not only is it stronger to begin with, it's also brand new, so that's also going to make a difference.